first of all, I want to thank the organization for having me here and to allowing me to speak today. But most people will not know me because I'm from Belgium, and Belgium is a small country between the Netherlands and France, and it's shaped a little bit like this. So I wanted to say that really. So my name is Dave Woestenborghs. I think for the most English speaking people that's a difficult name, so I put up how you can pronounce it, so practice it a little bit so you know how to do it. And in my day job, I work in a company called Colors. It's located in the city of Den Bosch in the Netherlands. And mostly I'm working there using Umbraco, but also I have to do some sidecore. And I've been using Umbraco since 2008, I think. I was looking for an alternative for .NET Uke, which I was using before. I found Umbraco, and since I found Umbraco, I never looked back at .NET Uke. And I really started advocating Umbraco in our company. And at the moment, it's really fast growing part of our business. And something I'm personally really proud of is that I was nominated as an MVP in this year. And not just because I was nominated, but it means that I spend a lot of time on our Umbraco helping other people. So, but my talk today is about building custom sections in Umbraco. Are there people that already built a custom section in Umbraco? Ooh, that's not much. Did you do it in version 6 or version 7? 6, okay. Yeah. For people that don't know what custom sections are are ideal when you want your editors to manage external data, but it can also be data from the CMS. One of the custom sections I built was, for example, they had on every page on the website, users could post comments, but the editors should approve them first, and the comments were stored as documents in the CMS. We made just a custom section where they could see all comments which need to be approved. So they saw what page would appear in a tree, and then they click on the page and they see all the comments that need published. It's a little bit like a Richard Suterman. I don't know if you know, he now created a package called Bulk Manager, so it was easy then for them to publish all the comments without having to find them in a tree. Yeah, and custom sections exist of custom trees, and custom trees are a way to navigate your data. And if you look at the sections that are already in place in Umbraco, you see, for example, the settings section, you see a lot of trees. You have the dictionary tree, the templates tree. So a section can have multiple trees. And the source of your data can be anything. Like I said, it can be Umbraco content, but it can be a database or an API or just text files or XML files. The technology, how we build custom sections, has drastically changed since a year now, I heard, since version 7 wasn't introduced. Because before version 7, so we go back in the past, we used ASP.NET Web Forms to build custom sections. Actually, you used web forms for extending everything in the backend. But you could also build custom sections using MVC. I've seen some people do that. And actually, it was already possible to use Angular and Web API. If you go back to present day, so Umbraco 7, we use Angular and ASP.NET Web API or something else to connect to your data. But we can also still use the ASP.NET MVC views for building a custom section. And we even still can use ASP.NET forms. Even sections that are built for version 6 or version 4 can actually be used in version 7. But you have to do some minor tweaking of the UI. Actually, if you go to the current backend, stuff like the dictionary tree is still using user controls. It's not not yet been ported to Angular views. People started using Angular already in the backend, because I did this similar talk 2 months ago at a Dutch user group meeting, and I haven't used Angular before I did that talk. And now we are using Angular a lot in our new projects. It really changed the way how we create sites. Just like Niels just showed with the football team editor, it's a great way to providing context to your editor. Sometimes, before we used Angular, we should create a list of certain node types, and then we had a picker to let them pick. And now we just create a custom editor which does everything, and you can have preview, so when they start typing, they can actually see the results like it's meant to be shown at the front end. And it's really, editors really like this kind, small kinds of changes, which give them context, and it's really easy for them. So if you haven't tried using Angular for building property editors or custom sections, you really should do that. But when you build custom sections, for me, the most difficult part that I struggled with was how the routing works. And Angular loads a route based on this kind of, I should say, path. The first thing is your name of your section. The second is the name of your tree. And then the method, maybe it's create or delete or edit. And then the ID of the item that you want to change. If we put that in a real URL, you see something like your domain and then /Umbraco because you're on the backend, and then ump_uk_fest is my section, speakers is my tree, and then I'm going to edit it, and you see it's the ID. Then Umbraco will load the views based on a convention, and because of this route, and it will load your view, your edit view or your create view from this path. It's app plugins folder, my package, and that you can define using a plugin controller attribute on your tree controllers, but I will show this later in the code. Then /backoffice because you are working in the back office. Then your tree type, in this case it will be speakers, and then the method, it will be edit, and that's where your view will be located on the file system. But this is the default routing which comes out of the box, but you can override it for every tree item that you have. You can create a custom route, and also for your menu actions, like when you click create and you don't want to use the default dialog, you can create one yourself. It's also much easier to reuse existing components. People who have built a custom section in V6 and try to reuse the built-in rich text editor know how difficult that it is. You have to do some kind of black magic and then suddenly it works. But actually you don't know what you are doing, you're just following some examples you find online, but it never has been clear to me what everything does. But in version 7 it's much easier. We can use directives. There are a lot of directives in the core which generate a markup like all the rest of the C backend. Something like ump_paint, ump_header, and there are a lot more, ump_property, ump_editor. There are a whole bunch of them in there. You can also use directives for validation. There's for example, for a regular expression validation and other kind of validation. And then you can also use the built-in services for interaction with the CMS, like you want to pick an image, you can use a dialog service, or you want to do something with your tree, you can use a tree service, or you want to display a message, you can use the notifications service. But now I've explained a lot, but I think it's easier when you see some code. So I prepared a little demo site. And I created a custom section here with a nice icon. So, and in this custom section, I have 2 trees. So the speakers of today, it's only me, and the sessions. So, and then when you click one of the items, you can see the edit screen. And I'm going to try to walk you through what I did to build this. the first thing you need to do when you build a custom section is create a class that implements an interface called iApplication. And then you decorate it with an application attribute. And that's just it. You compile your solution, and then when you restart it, Umbraco will detect this class and register your custom section. So creating a custom section is really easy. Then when you want to create your trees, of course, so you can navigate your data. It's actually almost the same. You create a class which inherits from tree controller, and then you decorate it with a tree attribute, which says to which section does this tree belong, and you give it an alias and a title. And then I also decorated it with a plugin controller, and that's what I showed in one of the slides. This is where you can find your files in the app plugins folder. So this helps you for finding your files. So you say, this is my name. In this case, it will be UKFest, and then it will look for the files in that folder, in the app plugins folder. Then when you have your tree in place, you of course want to render your nodes. So you have to override a method called getTreeNodes. And what I have done here, I have already got an API controller in place which gets all my data, and I just create tree nodes. I say this is the ID. The -1 is the parent ID in this case. So you can also have trees with multiple levels. Query strings is something that is passed in, and I pass this the query string what is used in the browser, so you can pass them through your tree node. And then in this case, I set the name of my node, so the text that will appear and an icon. And so I built my tree node. And the other thing that you have to implement in your tree is, maybe I should take the other one first. Speaker. It's your actions. So if you right click, you get some actions on your tree nodes. What you can do. What I have done here is, if it's the root node, I want to refresh everything. There's just a built-in function, so you don't have to do anything for it, just add it. And then I have created a tree action to create a new item. So if you click on your root node, it will say create. And I just use the built-in function, so I don't have to do anything for routing. And then if I am on my item itself, I also will render the built-in delete action. So when I click create here, you see it will make my route in the browser UKFest speakers edit -1 the ID, and it will add a parameter create, square string parameter create. So based on that parameter, you can know I'm creating a new item. But now I am already, I have already my editor view in place. So let's show that, how I built that. So I go to my web solution, I have app plugins for folder, and then UKFest folder. And then, because my tree is called speakers, I also have a folder speakers. And then, let me show my view. So I have just a form tag on there, bind it to an Angular controller in this case, which I will show soon. And then you see I'm using all the directives that come with Umbraco, like panel, header to display the header on top of the items. So then if you go down a little bit, you see I have a tab view directive, which I put tabs on, and in the tabs I put panes. And then for every field, I use the control group with a label and a description. And in the control group, I put my actual edit fields, which are tied to my Angular scope. So if you go to the front end, you can see maybe the colors maybe not that clear, but you see where the enter name field is. That's the header part. Then we have our tabs, And then we have all our fields. And because I use the control group, it actually looks like all the properties you have in your content section. So you have a label and a description, which provides some help for your editors, and then the fields to edit the content of your item. So maybe I have to show now how my controller works. So what I do when the controller loads, I say my scope loaded to false, so I don't show my actual fields and actually the entire form until I have loaded all my dependencies. And I have something, a property on the scope to see that I set to see if somebody has an image set. Then I define my different tabs. So I have two tabs in this case. So one is speaker information, the other one is the image. This part I will skip for now, I will come back to that later. Then here I check if my route params, the ID is -1. It actually means that we are creating a new speaker object. So I just create an empty speaker object and set my scope to load it through. If I have an ID that's different from -1, it means that I have an actual session that I have opened. So I will get the data for the speaker from my web API that I created through an Angular resource. Maybe I should show the resource. A resource is something you build and you define some functions on which call my API in this case, and that can be reused. So you just have to inject it in your controller and you can reuse it everywhere in your Angular application. So this just has a get by ID function to retrieve my speaker, it has a save function, and a delete by ID function to delete it. So what I do here is I get my speaker based on the ID and the route params, and then when I get a response back from it, I will fill my speaker object, so all my fields will get filled with the information. The rich text editor part I will come back to later. And then I set my scope loaded to true, so my form will show. I have to go back. So maybe I will create a new speaker here. And then we have to fill in some information, company. And now you see I already have some validation in place. It says you have an invalid Twitter name. How did I do that? It was actually very simple. It took some time to find out. But you just can have a valregex attribute on your input field where you have a regular expression in, and then you already have regular expression validation on your input fields. So it's really simple to have this validation. You don't have to write any JavaScript for doing this validation yourself. It's just an attribute, and there's already in the core there are a lot of other validation attributes in there. So it really helps you to build applications. And then I only show this message depending if my form is dirty, so I have changed something, and this field is invalid. So, and if, because maybe there are other validations, I also check if the error is from this property, from this attribute, valregex. And there's also just a directive that you can reuse the valregex in your code. So I have to fix it, and then I can save it. So and now I've created a new speaker. You see I get a nice notification, and the tree is also updated, so the new speaker is visible. How do I do that? Very simple. I have a save method on my scope. I just check is my form valid, otherwise do nothing. If some check on my image object, if it's empty or undefined or null, I just set it to 0 because the field in my database is an integer. And then I just call my speaker resource, the save method on that, pass my scope object to the method, and then when it gets back, I show the notification service. And then I have to find the path in the tree of where I am at, and then I can tell the navigation service to sync the tree, so it will reload the tree so that my new node will be visible. So now I've created a new speaker, and I just used the built-in function for creating new entities. But what if I have a lot of fields that are required? Maybe you want to have a dialog when you say create, and that I've built here on my session. So I want to enter a name, which room, and which time slot the speaker is going to speak. So how have I done that? So that I created, so that I can show this custom dialog. When I define my wrong controller, when I create my menu actions, I don't use the built-in create action, but I define my own. I call it create, add my own icon, get some text from the localization service. And now, because I called my action create, it will also need that view. So I created a special view for that. Just also, again, a form. Use some other directives. I also create my own directives for the room dropdown and the time slot dropdown. And that's actually a best practice in Angular. If you want to reuse some stuff, create a directive for it. So think of it like an MVC partial view or a user control in .NET. So, and actually, it's not difficult to create it. If I just can find it. This is actually all the code. I say restricted, it's an element, replace the directive code, and then the template what I want to show. Now it's just hard-coded in my directive. Maybe in the future I will make this call an API to get the rooms from a database or somewhere else. So, but for now I just hard-coded it. But in case you want that to be picked from a database, you can create a directive and put the logic to retrieve the items in the drop-down here. So if you want to reuse it somewhere else, you don't have to write the code again. You can just say rooms drop-down and it works. So I was showing this create dialog. I also have a controller. And the only thing it does is I get an empty object, so I know what my scope is, what fields there are, and then when I click the save button, I save it again, and I sync the navigation tree, and then I hide the navigation. So you have the dialog that slides out when you create, and you have to hide it yourself, otherwise it stays open after clicking save. But the coolest part I'm getting to now is actually how to reuse existing stuff, what is already available in Umbraco. And one thing I've built is like an image picker, so we should do it here. You see, it just looks like the built-in image picker, but actually it isn't. So when I click on this, the dialog will open and the media picker will open, and then we can pick an image of Niels. So I'm going to close some windows. Actually, how did I do it? I copied the markup from the actual media picker, so it looks the same. And then when you click on it, I have an add image and remove image function. And what does it do? It just calls the dialog service and then tell it to open the media picker. Start node is just the root. I only want to pick one. And when I click on an image, it will call my callback function, and then I can add the selected value to my scope. And the same thing goes for the remove function. I just clear my scope. And this shows how easy it is to use the built-in pickers. You can just it could also be a content picker, or the embed dialog in the rich text editor. This also can be used, and there are a lot of other dialogues already in place that you can use. But the coolest part is you can also create your own dialogues, and I will get to that later. But as you already have seen, I think I have rich text editor here. And how did I do this? What I do is define on my scope an array property where I say label is the body text, I give a description, and then I tell it which Umbraco view to use, and then the config. And these are actually the pre-values that you have selected in your data type editor. Marcus from Ankle Media, the guys that built the Newsletter Studio package, they wrote a blog post about this, how he came to this solution, and he tried several ways to reuse the rich text editor. And actually you have to put it in an array, and then to render it, you have to go up. You actually have to put it in a tag where you call ng-repeat, and then you can use the editor directive and you pass your model to it, and then it shows the rich text editor. He also explains why you have to do this approach. It's about the way Angular loads stuff. So sometimes if you just click in your tree, Angular will not load all dependencies again. So, but if you do it in a ng-repeat, it will reinitiate all the stuff if the scope is changed. And if you don't do it with a repeat, if you just say editor and then model, and then my model wouldn't be an array, then it will load the first time you open your section, but all the other times it will not work because you are navigating. So, but I thought by myself, this could be done easier, and if my screen will work. And I looked at a package called Vorto by Matt Bracewell. I don't know if he's here, but because he does something similar. You pick a document, a data type, and then you have it in multi-languages. And how did he do it? He just created an API, which I took some parts from. I have to go to my core project. And what I do is I get all data types from the data type service. I cache them for performance. Then I find them based on the name of the data type, in this case, rich text editor. And then I format the data so I can use it in my views and in my controllers. And that's it. So how does it work? I just created a resource to communicate with the data API. So, and then wrong one. This one and this one. So what I do is I call the data type resource and I say get by name rich text editor. And then when I get a result, I just create an array, put in my config, which comes from my data type and the view. So I don't have to figure out myself which view is used and what type of options do I have. I just get it from the data type, which is already configured. So, and for rendering, it's again the same. We have the ng repeat. So you see I have the rich text editor. Maybe I can show how easy it is to change that. I don't know. Maybe will get a bug because I don't exactly know, but probably do it without cache. Probably the data type name is not correct. So uh, I didn't make it case sensitive. Actually, you see now it's a content picker, so it's very easy to reuse all the data types, and it works for actually all the data types that you can define. So it's really shows really how flexible it is to build your custom section and reuse existing stuff. It took me only a few lines of code to reuse all the data types. The API controller is like 20 lines, and then my data type resource is like 10 lines, and I can reuse everything. If you try this in version 6, I think you would have given up on building your custom section. But another cool thing I have, now we have a custom section in place. And of course, sometimes you want to pick in your content, you want to pick stuff from your items from your custom section, like a speaker or a session. Or in my case, I want to assign a speaker to my custom section and a speaker that I created. So the only thing I have to do is assign it. So, and it works like all the pickers in Umbraco. And that is even easier to build. Where is it? I'm looking at this. I created a speaker dialog controller, and a speaker dialog view. And in my view, I just have, again, a directive which is already available in Umbraco. It's the tree. It's also used by the other pickers from Umbraco. I say, I'm having really trouble. Oh, okay, session's over. Okay, he's coming back. No, I just have the tree directive, and you say, load from this section, the speakers tree. Then you define an event handler function, which is on your scope. You say it's used in a dialog. You can hide the header and hide the options. And there are some other attributes that you can set. I didn't look at anything, not at all of them, just the one I needed. So if you go to the only thing what I created in the dialog is a function called dialog event handler, and I hook into the tree node select. I have to do something, and what I do actually is just pass the name and the ID of the node that I selected. Now, I want to show how do I call this dialog. I'm looking in the wrong controller again. This is actually how I open a dialog. I say dialog service open, and then I say template. I define my own template, so my own view, and then a callback function, which will fire when you selected something in your tree dialog. This can also be reused. You can create a directive. Actually, you should create a directive for it. Then you can reuse it in your property editor if you want to build one. So it's really easy to get this data into your content. Actually, I have one thing I haven't showed. That's how I is the delete function. So I want to delete this item. So I create a new action called delete, and this will also route to the delete view. So then you get your text, you get an OK and a cancel button, and if I click OK, it will delete my session. And actually, it's very simple also. This is all the view code. So I get the current node name, and then I have some functions on my buttons, delete and cancel. And then the controller, it translates to this. So I again call my speaker resource, hide the navigation, remove the node from the tree after I've deleted it. So, and I give a notification, and I do also do a location.path to my custom section, because otherwise, if you delete it and you are just editing that node, it will stay open, and then you get unexpected results if you click save and stuff again. So, are there any questions? Because I think I showed a lot. Maybe I went too fast, but Morten. Yeah, I will share it later. I didn't have an adapter for electrical fittings here, and my battery ran out. So I will also share the slides on SlideShare, so I will publish a tweet when I have shared it. Figuring routing took me a while, and I looked a lot at the source code to find out what kind of directives are there, because unfortunately it's not well documented. And when I started preparing this presentation for the Dutch user group, Tim also started blogging about it. And I see Tim doesn't use all the directives. I think he just copied the output the directives create from Chrome developer tools or something and put that in there. But in my slides, we'll get back to my slides now. I have some interesting reading as well. So for me, what was one of the main advantages is this uses code conventions. So you don't have to code everything. If you want to create a custom dialog, when you create something in V6, you have to update an XML file, you have to implement a class which implements a certain interface, you have to create a user control. This works much faster, and for me it was much easier. And actually, I haven't done any Angular. I said it also like 2-3 months ago, and now we are building projects, and yeah, we use a lot of Angular. We create a lot of custom property editors. It really changed the way how we build our sites, and actually customers are more happy. So you also have to write less backend code. Yeah, you only create your web API for communicating and your tree controller. That's almost everything that you have to do. And the main advantage is we have some front-end developers which are very good at Angular, much better than me. So when we made a custom section for a customer, I did all the backend code and handed it to the front-ender, and he just started. And so now a front-ender also can extend the Umbraco backend, which wasn't possible before. So, and actually, the front-enders at our company, they get very excited if they can do that, because it's away from the normal work, building front end, and then you can actually help making the back end better. Yeah, and like I said, it's also much easier to reuse the existing components which are already there. And then my screen goes. Actually, my last line is, you don't need to be an Angular expert to do all this, because I haven't done anything with Angular outside of Umbraco, so it's not a steep learning curve. So yeah, questions I already asked. Then I have some useful links. So the Umbraco documentation about Angular, Tim's blog, the Angular Media blog, and then you have David Brendel. Don't know if you know the event calendar package. It also uses a custom section. Warrants and analytics package uses a custom section. And the source code for this presentation, we'll share that also. So no more questions? Okay. No, I didn't do a dashboard, but you can do that. It's just updating the dashboard config for your section. So yeah, this is just copying your app plugins folder, and then it's deployed. You can also do everything in code, but yeah, then you have to embed your JavaScript files so that you have a single assembly, just what you prefer. So.